Congressman Himes, this is confusing, certainly to follow. In tomorrow's hearing with the intelligence community's inspector general, who forwarded this report saying it was an urgent concern, what exactly is the inspector general going to be able to talk about? I know it's behind closed doors, but is he going to be able to tell you what is actually in the complaint, or who was instructing him, or who's instructing the DNI not to hand it over to your committee, if that's what's happening?
Well, yes, I think he will be able to discuss what's in the report. Remember, the law requires him to forward that complaint to the relevant congressional committees, to my committee. This idea that the DNI has the authority to say, no, I disagree with the Inspector General's decision, is lawless. It's made up out of whole cloth. He does not have the authority to do that. And the reason that's important, Anderson, and people need to understand this because it's not that complicated. Remember, a whistleblower is somebody within an organization who says something's going on here that isn't quite right. The idea that the boss of that organization, in this case the acting DNI, could say, sorry, we don't agree that this should be dealt with outside, that betrays the whole purpose of having a whistleblower. Imagine this whistleblower right now is thinking to themselves, all the protections that I have, the whistleblower protections that I have by law, are now at risk because the boss decided lawlessly to stop this from happening. So, at some level, it's pretty simple, Anderson.
So let me just clarify that, because this is a really key point. You're saying under law, if the Inspector General has forwarded this whistleblower complaint, has deemed it of urgent concern, deemed it a real issue, has forwarded it to the DNI, you're saying the DNI does not have the legal authority to not forward it on to Congress. The DNI's only option is to forward on to Congress, and they can add comments if they want, saying, I don't think this is valid, I don't think this is under our purview, but he has to forward it to Congress.
That's exactly right, and you said it exactly right. The DNI can add explanatory comments, but in this case, the DNI appears to have consulted with the Department of Justice, which has no role under the law in this determination, and is acting on the face of it. You don't even need to be a lawyer to understand this, is acting illegally in doing this. By the way, quite apart from the law, which is pretty important in the United States of America, in the history of these referrals, there has never been a case in which the boss, in this case the DNI, has overruled an inspector general or said that this is not a meritorious decision. It has never happened before. And the reason that's really important, quite apart from the rule of law, is that, again, think about the whistleblower. If the whistleblower doesn't know that they have the ability in a protected way to go to the congressional committees on things that are profoundly serious. I don't know what's in this complaint, but remember, the intelligence community takes lethal action, it surveils, it does really dangerous things. Inside the intelligence community, if somebody doesn't believe that there is a legally protected route to get to people like me in the Congress behind closed doors, what happens? They go to the press. They do an Edward Snowden, and they decide that that's the best way to blow our secrets out into the public. And so while it may seem complicated, at some level, this is very simple. There is a law that determines how somebody who thinks that there has been wrongdoing can come to the Congress, and the DNI is right now illegally standing in the way of that process.
But just to be clear, I mean, in terms of what this whistleblower has raised, or alleged whistleblower has raised, at this point, we don't, and you don't know what is contained in that complaint. You don't know what this complaint is about at all. Is that correct?
Well, that's right. We do have a little bit of a hint, and you alluded to this in your opening. The DNI, in the letter to the committee, said that this involves other executive department equities of people that, quite frankly, when you read the language, would appear to reference the president, because there aren't other people other than the president of the United States who have privilege in the executive department. The president does have executive privilege, but again, there is no provision for the DNI to make that determination. It is an illegal determination standing in the way of a process that is essential to making sure that the intelligence community behaves itself and abides by the law.
So just in terms of what's going to happen, I mean, tomorrow you have the Inspector General testifying behind closed doors to you. Next week, acting DNI McGuire is agreeing to testify in open session. Certainly, as we saw yesterday with Corey Lewandowski, just because someone agrees to a hearing these days, it doesn't mean they're going to actually answer the committee's question. Do you have any guarantees he'll actually be forthcoming in his answers?
Well, inspector generals, of course, by their very nature, are supposed to be independent. They're outside of the hierarchy. They can't get fired by the boss, in this case, the DNI. So I do anticipate that the inspector general, I hope the inspector general will tell us what the substance of the complaint is. And look, maybe there's nothing to it. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We don't know. It appears to involve maybe the President of the United States, but we just don't know that. But we do need to know that. And we need to make sure the integrity for whistleblowers is there. And then, by the way, Anderson, we watched Corey Lewandowski yesterday simply refuse to answer the questions of the Congress. So there needs to be accountability here, and it is time for the Congress of the United States to start asserting its authority, probably through mechanisms like inherent contempt, where we start fining people and making people very, very uncomfortable when they thumb their nose at the elected representatives of the people of the United States of America. So this DNI, Corey Lewandowski, and all the other people who have come before Congress and said, hey, guess what? I'm not answering your questions because Donald Trump doesn't want to. They need to be held accountable. And look, this isn't a Democratic anti-Trump thing. Our country doesn't work if the Congress doesn't have the ability to do oversight of the executive branch. And my Republican friends need to remember that there will be a Democratic president someday, and they will rue the day they supported a Republican president in thumbing their nose at the Congress of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, whoever's in power, we have checks and balances for a reason, and clearly if this is this seems to be a breakdown, at the very least, not only in whistleblower protections, but in checks and balances, whatever the complaint may be. Congressman Himes, appreciate it. We'll learn more, hopefully tomorrow.